Unfortunately, we got some sad news to get into here because the sad news broke on Friday that Loverboy Dennis Condrey, one of the founding fathers of the Midnight Express, one of, some might even say the greatest tag team of all time, died on Friday at the age of 76. He co-founded the Midnights in 1980 as a team with Randy Rose, the idea being that they would be out past midnight, partying all night, every night, which would explain why Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty used to be called the Midnight Rockers when they first got paired up. Condrey and Rose, they later added a third member, Norvell Austin, to make it a trio, and they operated under the Freebird rule whenever they would defend their titles and just rotate as needed. That is not the version of the Midnights, though, that most people remember. That would be Dennis Condrey and Bobby Eaton, who were put together by Bill Watts in Mid-South, and they were managed by Jim Cornette, where they feuded with the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. And the rest is history, the most legendary tag team rivalry of all time. And it extended far beyond Mid-South into the NWA and beyond for many, many years. And there have been multiple incarnations of the Midnight Express, only one incarnation of the Rock and Roll Express. But they had hundreds of matches together, just up and down the roads across multiple territories. They also had a memorable feud with the Road Warriors, which led to that infamous scaffold match at Starrcade 86, where Cornette dropped down from the scaffold. Big Bubba Rogers was supposed to catch him, and somehow he missed. And Cornette came straight down and blew out both of his knees. And Road Warrior Animal told a great story about that many years ago. You know, Big Bubba, Big Boss Man, as I grew up knowing him. This was right before he became the Big Boss Man. But Boss Man and Hawk, they were tight, and they rode together. They loved to get high. And Boss Man apparently got high as a kite the night before that match. And nobody could tell because at the time he wore sunglasses to the ring. And all he did was stand there. So he's standing there in sunglasses and you wouldn't know anything was wrong. Now, Cornette is afraid of heights. He doesn't even like to fly. I mean, he drives everywhere. But he's going to take this fucking bump from the scaffold where he's trying to get away, he's trying to scamper off, and now he's hanging off the side of it. It wasn't like he was thrown off like fucking Mick Foley off the Hell in a Cell. But, you know, he's hanging there from the side of the scaffold, and Animal yells down to Boss Man. He's like, "Are you ready?" And he's looking down like, there's no way this guy's going to catch him. Like, Cornette's going to kill him. He's going to land on him. He's going to kill him. How's this going to work? But he's like, "Are you ready?" And then he tells Cornette to drop, and Boss Man is like 3 feet off, completely misses him, and he could hear the popping sounds that Cornette's knees made on landing because he came straight down. Again, he just blew out both of his knees. I want to say he had actually hurt his knee earlier in the show, but he did the spot anyway, and at that point, everything just went to hell, and his knees were all fucked up. But then, like, him and Hawk, Animal and Hawk, they're just up there on the scaffold looking down, laughing their asses off. And Boss Man is just standing there like, oh, shit. Yeah, scaffold matches are very dumb. That's why you don't see them anymore. So Condrey was a part of all that. And then when Condrey left the NWA in 1987, he disappeared there for a few months. I think he had claimed many years later he had disappeared to address some personal issues. And he got replaced with Sweet Stan Lane. And some people consider that to be the best version of the Midnight Express. Others think it's Condrey and Eaton. You know, it's a pretty rare thing to have a successful tag team like that and replace one member with another, and they go on to be just as successful, if not more so. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. Tag team chemistry is a real thing. Some have it, some don't. But both versions also had Jim Cornette as their manager, which helped. You know, Cornette's one of the greatest of all time. It doesn't hurt having him in your corner and doing most of the talking for you. I mean, you talk about GOAT managers. You're looking at Bobby Heenan, Paul Heyman, and Jim Cornette. That's your trio right there. Put them in whatever order you want to put them in. Those are the 3 greatest managers of all time. And funny enough, when Condrey resurfaced later in 87, it was in the AWA with Randy Rose as the original Midnight Express, and they were managed not by Cornette, they were managed by Paul E. Dangerously. And then they headed to the NWA for a feud with Eaton, Lane, and Cornette. So it was the OG Midnights against the new Midnights, Cornette against Paul E. You can imagine those promos. And it was a hot feud. They made a lot of money together and they drew well. And as the story goes, it was to build to a trios match with the managers involved at the Chi-Town Rumble in '89, where the loser of the fall would be fired. And when Condrey realized that Randy Rose would be the one taking the losing fall and he would be shoot fired, he bailed. And they had to substitute somebody else in there to finish I don't remember who it was, but they put somebody else in his place and they did the match. And I believe Randy Rose took the losing fall. So it all fizzled out there at the end. But after 1989, Condrey disappeared into retirement for many, many years until 2004. He and Bobby Eaton, they started working independents together as the Midnight Express, and he wrestled on and off. I think he did some singles, but mostly tags, all the way until 2011. On a career that started way back in 1973. That's a long time. Over 50 championships to his name. Truly one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. And I feel like someone, like outside of those fans older than me, or maybe in my age group, who were at least aware of who he was, or had heard of the Midnight Express, as the years go on, that'll be forgotten about. Because he's not one of these glorified figures in WWE history. WWE has in many ways become the arbiter of wrestling history, at least on a kind of a mainstream, like global scale, because they own all of these different tape libraries and they kind of dictate their own version of history and when they decide to tell it and what they tell and who they talk about, who they don't talk about. You know, it's why they put people in their Hall of Fame who never worked for WWE. Doesn't make any sense. Why would you put people in your Hall of Fame that never even worked for your company? They pick and choose certain names because they feel like, hey, we're the arbiter of history here. There's a lot of wrestling Hall of Fames, and some that are even more prestigious than the WWE Hall of Fame in the eyes of some. But again, on a grand scale, it's WWE. And they own all of this history when they put these video packages together. I mean, they tell the stories that they want to tell. You know, for better or worse, that's just the way that it is. He never worked for WWE. Condrey never worked for them. And he's not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Somehow the Midnight Express is not in. The Rock and Roll Express is in. And they even had Jim Cornette induct them, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense, seeing as how he feuded with them for so many years. But Cornette should be in there with the Midnights. And none of them are in. And I can only imagine it has to do with the deals that they make you sign when you go into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if it's a Legends deal or some other kind of deal. I don't know what kind of limitations they may put on what you can and can't do and how you can and can't make money, outside of what WWE can make off of you. But it's insane that they're not in there. And now Condrey and Bobby Eaton, they're not even alive anymore. I think Stan Lane's the only one left outside of Cornette. But you'll have, actually, I don't know where Randy Rose is. I don't hear his name mentioned anymore. But you'll have generations now of fans that have no concept of how big the Midnight Express was and the Rock and Roll Express was until they watch The Vault on YouTube. Or you need to be somebody who actually gives a shit about wrestling history. So you'll research online. You'll watch YouTube clips. You'll buy the books. You'll watch the shoot interviews. How many people really do that? I mean, realistically, you know what I mean? So outside of that circle, it's sad that a lot of people will never know. But that's just how it goes. CM Punk and FTR, they paid tribute to Condrey in AEW back in 2023. I think it was off the air. Condrey was in the crowd that night. They invited him into the ring, and they were just putting him over. And they let him speak to the audience. It was hard for him to speak without his voice box. He had beaten throat cancer years before. But he spoke anyway, and it was a very cool... and you could understand him, and it was a very cool moment. And this had to be not long before Punk had his last match with Joe at Wembley, because I remember in that segment he had the AEW title with the giant spray-painted X on it over his shoulder. So it was during that time period. Dax Harwood is the one who actually announced the news of his passing on social media. The two of them were very close. He has said that Condrey would text him after his matches, letting him know things he liked and things he could improve on. He's also started a GoFundMe to help cover his funeral services, to help his widow, Teresa. I saw Tony Khan and Chris Jericho alone. Between the two of them, they dropped $7,000 on the campaign. Others have contributed as well. Cody Rhodes, FTR, Nick Aldis, Michael Hayes. God, did the Midnights ever work with the Freebirds? I feel like they did. I think they did there towards the end. Now, you know what? I know they did because I vaguely remember Cornette telling a story about Michael Hayes not wanting to sell for the tennis racket. So I'm almost positive it was long after the Freebirds, I think, had kind of passed their expiration date, but I'm pretty sure towards the end there they did work together. That wasn't the only death this week. Chuck Norris died on Thursday, 9 days after his 86th birthday. I had just read on what was it, Thursday? On TMZ that he was rushed to the hospital in Hawaii. I don't know if he was living there, if he was vacationing there. After some sort of medical emergency, he was rushed to the hospital, but he was said to be in good spirits. And then came the news that he died on Thursday morning and he became a spirit. The family isn't saying why or how. They've chosen to keep that private. But I mean, the man was 86. I mean, a sudden medical emergency is not all that uncommon. I mean, his mother died not that long ago. I think a couple of years ago, maybe. She was like 104. You know, if you're on the younger side, you may only know him from the Chuck Norris jokes online and those Total Gym infomercials. But he was part of that 80s movies era with the big, tough action heroes like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, Steven Seagal, Missing in Action, Delta Force, Lone Wolf McQuade. Missing in Action and Delta Force, I guess by default, were my favorites. I wouldn't say I necessarily have a favorite Chuck Norris movie that I love to go back and watch, but I will tell you, those movies, okay, were replayed constantly on television. And I'm not talking even cable. This is when I was younger, and they would have them on, like, here in New York, it would have been Channel 11, so WPIX, like on the weekend or whatever, and they would show those movies all the time. That is how I watched them. I didn't go to the theater to see them. It was just on TV. And there's Chuck Norris, killing dudes and blowing shit up. Walker, Texas Ranger, which used to come on USA Network before Monday Night Raw, right? He became very popular with that show. I never watched the show, but I used to love the clips that Conan O'Brien would play on his late night show when he used to randomly pull down the giant lever. Whenever it would play the most absurdly corny clips from the show. And just the best one. The best one was the little kid. I think it was Haley Joel Osment telling the people, Walker told me I have AIDS. And I'm just like, I don't know the context to any of this. So I see the clip like everybody else in the audience and everyone's just fucking dying laughing because it's just the most ridiculous thing. And you just can't help but laugh, especially without context. I mean, it sounds awful, but it just comes out of nowhere. I should go back and watch the show if it's always been that ridiculous. But he had a wrestling connection. I bring this up because WWE brought him in as the outside enforcer for the Undertaker-Yokozuna casket match at the 1994 Survivor Series. Yeah, we got 2 casket matches that year on pay-per-view between Undertaker and Yokozuna. I mean, that is just diabolical. But WWE issued a statement on his passing, saying WWE is saddened to learn that legendary Hollywood actor and pop culture icon Chuck Norris has passed away. A legend in the television and film industry with iconic projects such as Walker, Texas Ranger, The Way of the Dragon, and many more, Norris became one of the most recognizable stars in Hollywood, with his martial arts background playing a key role in his films and shows. Norris made an iconic appearance... Boy, we throw that word around quite a bit, don't we? At the Survivor Series in 1994, where he served as the special enforcer for The Undertaker's casket match against Yokozuna. During the match, Norris delivered a devastating roundhouse kick to Jeff Jarrett, helping The Undertaker win. Yes, because The Undertaker, I mean, he would have clearly lost that match had Jeff Jarrett gotten his way. I mean... Of all the things that The Undertaker could overcome back then, I don't think that Jeff Jarrett would have been something that The Undertaker could have really done anything with. He would have been finished if it wasn't for Chuck Norris taking down the great Jeff Jarrett. Double J. Some memorable Chuck Norris facts for you, though. Did you know? Chuck Norris's tears can cure cancer. It's true. Too bad he never cried. Chuck Norris does not sleep. He waits. Once, a cobra bit Chuck Norris's leg, and after 5 days of excruciating pain, the cobra died. Holy shit, is Macho Man Chuck Norris? I just realized. Chuck Norris can strangle you with a cordless phone. And this one may have been one of my all-time favorites. The Boogeyman checks his closet for Chuck Norris. I don't know how long I must have spent reading those back in the day, but I could tell you I never got tired of them, and I don't think I ever will.